the Pearl of Africa. That's what Winston Churchill called the lush and lovely land of Uganda. But for 21 years, the luster of the Pearl has been dulled by the dust and devastation of war. Rebels calling themselves the Lord's Resistance Army have tried their utmost to topple the government, saying it reneged on a power-sharing agreement when it took office. The Acholi people of northern Uganda have paid with blood and sacrifice. In the course of the conflict, more than 35,000 children have been kidnapped by the rebels and turned into soldiers or sex slaves. Almost 2 million people have been chased off their land and herded into camps where their dignity and distinctive culture have been dealt a near-fatal blow. Thousands more have been mutilated or murdered in unspeakable atrocities. Now, though, a ceasefire is holding. The government has offered a blanket amnesty to all rebels who come in from the bush, regardless of what they've done, and thousands are returning home. Amid desperate hopes for a permanent peace, former child soldiers are living side by side with those they victimized. In ancient times, peace was symbolized when both sides in a conflict bent their spears, making them useless as weapons. This is the story of Uganda's search for reconciliation and the struggle for grace and forgiveness. The painful process of bending spears. John Achola's face is the face of war in northern Uganda. When he was 23, rebels mutilated his nose, lips, and ears, and chopped off his fingers. Today, he lives in a simple hut with his wife Grace and their 3 children, 4-year-old Alfred, 2-year-old Sunday, and Samuel, just 9 months. The routine here may seem normal, but the date life changed forever for Grace and John is branded on their hearts. Midnight, June 2nd, 2003. Insurgents kicked in the door, tied John to a rope and carried him off, stopping periodically to kick and beat him. The rebels falsely accused him of being with the Ugandan military, but he repeatedly denied the charge.
There
were other abductees from my village, and they asked a young boy if I was telling the truth. He was very afraid and told the rebels I was lying.
Later in the day, the Ugandan army attacked, which infuriated the LRA. Commanders believed the soldiers were trying to rescue John. He heard them discussing whether they should give him a short sleeve or a long sleeve, but he didn't know what they meant.
They continued to threaten me, telling me they were going to kill me. They asked me whether it was good to die, but I said nothing.
After calling for a knife and an axe, one of the rebel leaders ordered John to lift his face. As the young captive wept and screamed in pain, the commander cut off most of his nose, sliced away his upper lip, and severed both ears. With blood gushing everywhere, the rebels held John's hands, still tied behind him, to a small piece of log. His sadistic assailant then took an axe and lopped off the fingers on his left hand, giving him what the LRA calls a short sleeve.
As they started cutting my hand, I pleaded with them to leave my right hand so I could make a living. But they refused, saying they wanted to make sure I could never again handle a gun.
Mercilessly, the commander hacked away the fingers on John's other hand. The only consolation was that he spared him the long sleeve, amputation at the elbow.
After hearing the news, I was incredibly sad, but on seeing the actual wounds, I cried terribly. My parents tried to console me.
I had lost hope completely at the beginning because I thought I would not be able to help myself or support my family. People had been discouraging Grace, telling her, "Your husband is weak, he is disabled. How can he take care of you now?" That disturbed me so much because I thought she would leave me.
What kept my heart on John was that he's a loving and very kind young man. That was what attracted me to him. This other thing, the mutilation, I see it as nothing. And I remember as I was being discouraged by my friends, I wrote him a few words. I said, "My dear John, I still love you, regardless of what has happened. What if it had been me? You would not leave me, nor will I leave you."
Still, John's journey to inner peace and forgiveness did not come easily or quickly.
Before forgiving this man, I had a lot of bitterness in my heart. It kept disturbing me so much. I was planning evil revenge all the time. I had wanted also to get the young man who had accused me and mutilate him also. But later I let that go, and now I feel like I have put the burden down. I couldn't undo the mutilation, so I console myself by abandoning the whole idea of revenge because it was really bothering me for nothing. So I started moving forward. I abandoned revenge, anger, and worry because they don't help anything.
That's not the way his parents saw things. In fact, his father and mother were extremely angry about his stand on forgiveness and argued with him passionately.
So I kept on nursing the bitterness. John's faith and the way he lived finally encouraged me to forgive. I was like John's parents, but he encouraged me not to be like that. It took me a long time, but I too have forgiven them now. For me, there was no alternative but to forgive and get on with our lives.
And what about the boy who set off the mutilation in the first place?
That boy was just a child. I don't have any bad feeling towards him, but I worry that he's not around. I'd wanted to meet him so I could talk and be friendly with him, but I don't know if he's alive or not.
What makes that sentiment all the more remarkable is the way in which John's life continues to be drastically affected every day by just one lie.
One of the hardest things is eating, but this became much easier when a friend in Canada sent a tool that fits around my hand. My life has changed because now I can't do many of the things that I would otherwise be doing. For example, my friends work in construction, but all I can do is use my bicycle to fetch water and sell it to the builder. I make some money in that simple way, but I can't do the real work they are involved in.
Grace digs sand for those same workers, and together they get by. Their life is hard, but it testifies to the lasting power of love, forgiveness, and perseverance.
I don't care if I get compensation or even if the man takes responsibility. I will seek peace anyway because my forgiveness has sealed the whole thing.
I'm a freedom fighter.
And that forgiveness extends all the way to the supreme leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony, and his second-in-command, Vincent Oti.
The enemy.
Kony and Oti should not be punished. If you consider the magnitude of the evil they have done, they might have been out of their mind. Besides, you can't undo what they've done, so there's no sense in punishing them.
When the rebels come out of the bush, they should not be taken to jail, they should not be taken to court. They should come and see what they have done to people like John. They should take responsibility. Bitterness causes a lot of problems.
On that, the experts agree. Grace Kichoncho is a social worker in the criminal justice system.
Holding them or not forgiving them torments you yourself. You hate them, you feel bad about yourself, you get bitter, and scientists tell us that it even affects your health. So if people can be informed that by not forgiving other people, they are hurting themselves as well, and begin to look for ways of working it out, because it's really the strong that can forgive. It's not the weak that forgive, like some people tend to say sometimes.
And that's a cornerstone of the forgiveness that permeates the culture of the Acholi tribe in northern Uganda. Just as songs and dances have been passed down for countless generations, so too has a traditional justice system called Mato Put. As part of this ancient code, two sides in a dispute go through a series of steps culminating in a sacred ceremony in which two spears are bent and made useless to symbolize peace. Together, the parties then drink a potion of bitter herbs from a calabash gourd to illustrate the swallowing of pride, resentment, and revenge.